The following may contain offensive language, adult humor, and or content that some viewers may find offensive. The views and opinions expressed by any one speaker does not explicitly or necessarily reflect or represent those of Mark Radulich or W2M Network. Please listen with caution, or don't listen at all.
You better go take it. Always they need a new replacement. Decentralized, can't contain it. We're changing lives, yeah, upgrading. Call it suicide of the older generation. What keeps you up at night?
What does keep you up at night? We'll find out tonight on the Whiskey Rebellion. And I am your host, your dreamscape master, Mr. Mark Radulich, your mandated reporter, and frankly, I'm mortified. And joining me tonight is the punchy pugilist himself, Mr. Toxic Masculinity, my life coach, ladies and gentlemen, Foxtrot Uniform Charlie himself, Mr. Nifty Nicknames, Pat Mullin. How do you do, sir?
Good evening, everybody. Boy, it's been a while since we did a Whiskey Rebellion, and I'm very excited for this one because this one, Mark kind of let me have some free reign to do some things with. And I think this could be a fun recurring gimmick when we do these kind of movies. So you guys tell us in the feedback what you think about it, because you get to be the ones to experience it for the very first time.
That's true. Tonight we are reviewing Havoc, and you might say to yourself, is this my beautiful house? Is this my beautiful wife? And when you stop having the madness, you might say to yourself, why isn't this a damn you Hollywood or an on trial or part of a triple feature? And I threw all those things at Pat, and he threw them back at me and spit in my face. And he said, I'm tired of you trying to run your own goddamn podcast. So I just want to talk about this movie. Stop overloading me with your formats and gimmicks. And I said, well, what do you want, Pat? How do you want to do this? Like, how do we fit it in? It doesn't look like
I got an idea.
It doesn't look like it'll fit. And he said, let me just jam it in. You'll be fine. And I went, fine. What is it? What is the plan here? And he said, we're going to review Havoc, but then we're going to do some manly man movie skills. Just briefly, like 50 words or less, explain the pitch here.
There are certain categories and criteria that make an action movie great. And we've broken down those tonight, and we're going to score them on scales of 1 to 5 as we talk about this movie. There are certain essential elements of a manly movie that need to be had. And we've gone through those tonight, and we're going to explore them, talk about them, and see where a movie like this stacks up. And, you know, we chose Havoc because honestly, there may not be a more manly actor working today than Tom Hardy. Looks the part, acts the part. In real life is a longtime jiu-jitsu practitioner and likes to throw some Muay Thai in there. So he is a tough guy who can handle himself. We're big Tom Hardy fans here on the network, at least I am. So this seemed like the perfect opportunity to pick one of these movies to enact this scale upon.
I'm excited, and this is the place to do it. The Whiskey Rebellion is where we have fun. I've done these in the past with Ronnie Adams. We looked at the Bad Boy stuff, and we didn't do it really as a Long Road to Ruin. I'd watched the first one. Ronnie didn't bother to see it, but we ended up talking about the whole franchise and the games and everything. We had a long, extended talk about the Ghostbusters franchise, and he got to tell me all about going to cons dressed as a Ghostbuster, which is more his speed. We had what turned into a debate about Star Wars. So this, yeah,
it don't belong on this show.
Robert took the podcast hostage, and we talked for 2 hours about WrestleMania a couple of weeks ago. So the Whiskey Rebellion is a place where we come to just throw the formats out the window and have fun and do our own thing. But what is this movie, Havoc, you may ask? Havoc is a 2025 action thriller written and directed by Gareth Evans. If you don't know who Gareth Evans is, you do. You just didn't know it was Gareth Evans, because at this point, the high water mark in modern stylized action movies with awesome fight scenes is the guy from The Raid, who is Gareth Evans. He did The Raid 1 and 2. And
I want to thank Andrew Graham for recommending those to me before this show.
Yeah. I would say he's kind of setting the tone for what is the high watermark in stylized fights. If you think, what if every fight scene in every movie from now on is the Daredevil season 1 hallway fight scene? You have Gareth Evans to thank for that. This film stars Tom Hardy, Jesse Milai, Justin Cornwell, Kalen Sepulveda, as opposed to Sepultura, Barcelona, we love you. See ya! Luis Guzman, Eo Yan, Timothy Oliphant, which threw me for a loop, and Forrest Whitaker in his one eye. It is a co-production between the U.S. and the United Kingdom. The film was released on Netflix April 25th of 2025. This was put out by XYZ Films, and they must have like a working agreement with Netflix because a lot of their stuff ends up there. A little ways back, myself, I think for oh gosh, what's his nuts from Jeff from the Bleeding Edge. The first time I think he came on to kind of give the Radulich Broadcasting a twirl, we did the Anna Kendrick movie Stowaway, and that was an XYZ film.
Yeah, I believe their distribution partner, at least in the United States, is Netflix directly.
Right. So a lot of the movies that are not in theatrical exhibition here in the United States, you're like, where did these come from? They're generally speaking XYZ, and I have to say, without going through the list of movies, XYZ is typically a reliable distributor, a reliable production company. Their stuff is usually high quality, and they get good name actors. Like like I said, Anna Kendrick, Tom Hardy, many others. They're not they're not some of the more laughable independent production studios out there. They're no Lionsgate, for example.
All right, at least you actually went with a name one. I was going to say like Full Moon.
Yeah, that's another good one. All right, so what happens in this movie? I have a really brief synopsis here. In Havoc, Tom Hardy plays Detective Walker, a battered cop who punches his way through a citywide conspiracy after a drug deal goes south. What starts as a missing kid case, and the kid is like 20, turns into a brutal descent through corrupt cops, politicians, and cartel enforcers. Every room's a war zone. Every wall's waiting for someone's head. Hardy gets stabbed, shot, and waterboarded, not necessarily in that order, and still keeps fighting. In the end, he exposes the rot at the city's core, only to rival Gotham City's. The only way he knows how, with fists, fire, and a trail of broken bodies. It's grimy, gritty, and absolutely unhinged. We love it. At least that's what the AI tells me. All right, Pat, what did you think of Havoc?
So I was excited for this, I think, from the announcement point when I told you, like, hey, I've got an idea for a show, and it's based around this movie.
Mm-hmm.
And thanks to, again, Andrew Graham for recommending me the Raid films. Because if you watch those two films and you watch this, you definitely see the formula of how this is done and broken down.
Yeah.
This kind of playing more to the strengths of the American audiences, I think, and their what they're used to and what they would expect in a movie like this.
Mm-hmm.
You've got this, again, broken down, battered cop to start the movie. Patrick Walker, played by Tom Hardy. Basically everything that can go wrong for him does, to the point where he's dirty. He's fighting these dirty guys who are dirty for somebody else. There are politicians involved. There's organized crime involved. And this lone cop with one partner working with him has to sort through this whole dirty situation, get out of it alive, and save the day.
Mm-hmm.
And this was fantastic. It's really the way it's shot in this dark night with very poor lighting throughout, but poor in a good way, where your lights are provided by the natural environment around you, whether it's a lamppost or whether it's mood lighting in a club or a dark back room or a dimly lit poor hospital. It's really well done to set the mood in these scenes.
I'm going to say something controversial here. Okay? You ready?
Is it less is more?
No, that's tomorrow. Actually, that's a week from tomorrow. Now, I'm going to say something controversial here, but you have to understand how my beautiful mind works when I say what I'm about to say. This feels like the original first draft of what would eventually become Beverly Hills Cop. Like, yeah, this feels like what somebody wrote and took to a studio, and they're like, let's take out the gritty, worn down, dead-eyed cop, and let's put in a funny comedian. Let's change it from Gotham City to Beverly Hills, and let's put some jazzy music in there and make it more of an action comedy. and the director and the original writer of the screenplay then walked into the hallway and shot himself. That's
And
what
then
this
we
feels
got Cobra.
and then we got Cobra. Yes.
Yeah.
But this feels very much like a throwback to the 80s style like action movie before Hollywood tried to make it more appealing to mass audiences.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, like I just mentioned Cobra. This definitely gave me Cobra vibes in a lot of ways. With a modern sensibility to it, as opposed to the very stylized 80s sensibilities of Cobra.
It has a very noir feel to it. Like I definitely got kind of a China, like this is the bastard love child of, like I said, Beverly Hills Cop and Chinatown. Like they had dirty hobo sex, and this is its offspring.
I mean, Chinatown's an interesting one to throw in there. I was almost thinking more like maybe some of the Charles Bronson canon cop movies that were just obscenely violent.
Another way of looking at it is every inspiration for Rorschach from The Watchmen. Because Tom Hardy is definitely this world weary, like everything but the narration. Like he should, like as he's walking around in his first opening scene, he's like, I live in a city with eternal dirty snow. Everywhere I look is crime. That's all in his performance and in his face, and they had the good sense to not do that.
Yeah. So with again, I love the way it's shot. It's a really good melding of, you said, of past things in this vein, but new things that would update it and not make it feel dated or overly silly. We talked about Gareth at the start of this and his directorial style and the hallmarks that he's known for.
Yeah.
Finding a way to have basically a pitched gun battle in almost every location that this movie takes place is a special skill.
There was a draft of this where there's more of a whodunit, and somebody said, hey, what if we don't do that and just replace the whodunit with more gunfights?
Leave that shit to Glass Onion and Knives Out.
Right. Give that to Rian Johnson and replace everything with the Daredevil hallway fight scene. I have to say, like, my favorite scene in this movie, I have two. And I'm usually not the kung fu fighting action guy. I tend to find a lot of it boring, but I think it's because I'm bored by the style. Because here, my two favorite scenes are two fight scenes. The one where they're in the club, where even they make the girl look believable.
Yeah.
And, and it's like the way Gareth, it's like I'm watching this and I've never seen the raids, but I've seen everything else that this guy has done and everybody else that's copied him. So I'm like, this is looking really familiar. And I look it up, I'm like, oh, he's the raid guy. That explains this now.
Yeah.
That explains why I'm seeing what I'm seeing. And
he's allowed to copy his own stuff.
Yeah, he's fine. I like this movie infinitely more when I realized who it was. But I'm watching the scene in the club where everything is slick, smooth, fantastical, but believable at the same time. This guy is a real master of what I just said. He is a master of making things look both wildly unrealistic and still gritty and real at the same time. It's pretty amazing.
When you look at how he combines every element of that, we have two separate sects of the triad who are involved. We have a group of dirty cops involved. We have Hardy and his little crew that he's trying to protect /save /get out alive involved. It's that much action all over the place, to get that going. In the air.
That's a lot of stuff to manage.
Yeah, and he doesn't miss a beat and ties everything up where, okay, I will explain how we've gotten from point A to point B. And yet, I mean, we know it's silly, we know it's over the top, but it's like we say, be silly in your own environment without not acknowledging that environment exists and there are rules set to that environment.
Two things. I want to make two comparisons. One, I've often said Neil Fallon of Clutch doesn't sing, he preaches. Gareth Edwards doesn't direct, he conducts. When people say a symphony of violence, they're more like, I don't think they mean what they think they mean. Here, symphony of violence is actually the best way to describe what's happening. We've got the brass section here and the strings here and percussion here, and it's all melding together to produce this four-dimensional sound. That's the club fight scene.
Oh, he's symphonic in the entirety of this film, essentially. And does it in a way. There are more action beats in this film than there are, dialogue.
Lines of dialogue.
Exactly. Yeah. To be able to do that and still have a movie tie things together and keep logical sense throughout is kind of absurd in a great way. And I didn't even expect it to be as good as it was in that respect.
I want to compare this to, I think it was one of the Daniel Craig James Bond movies, and I remember screaming about it to Robert. It wasn't Casino Royale. It was
Quantum of
not.
Solace,
It was after Quantum of Solace.
Skyfall.
That's the one. So you've set up this world, and I don't want to go too far on a tangent. I want to talk about Havoc, but just so you understand what I'm saying, you've set up this gritty, real world, uh, fantasy spy movie where the punches hurt and the bullets wound and everything feels gritty and real, and then they do some shit to him in Skyfall, which is so far beyond the realm of realistic, and he just walks away and brushes it off his shoulder. I'm like, you've now broken the fantasy, which I've talked about any number of times. You can be as wild and as fantastical as you want, so long as you stay within the boundaries you set up. Skyfall goes out of bounds. This doesn't.
That's the argument. And again,
Mhm.
we're pro wrestling fans. That whole thing works on a suspension of disbelief. When you have two guys who are saying, I hate you, and what they do is engage in a very over the top, what we would call hardcore style of match that's very hard hitting, etc. And then all of a sudden they break out into throwing invisible grenades. Well, that doesn't work for us.
Yeah, I was going to say the old Larry Zonka. It's funny, I keep referencing this, as does Harry. The old Larry Zonka chestnut of, I hate you. I've done a home invasion. I've pulled a gun and I've assaulted your mother and I've kidnapped your children. And so here we are at the final match to settle the score. And we begin with a crisp collar and elbow tie up.
Right into a side headlock and a hammerlock. Yeah.
Yeah.
No hate, no vitriol. Again, establish that your universe is working with a different set of rules than the one we're in.
Right.
But respect those rules of that universe then. Don't just fucking throw them out the window to the side.
And what Gareth Edwards does, like, that's not his name. Gareth Evans.
Gareth Evans, yeah.
Yep. Gareth Edwards, different guy. Gareth Evans he stays within the sandbox he creates. He builds a very strong 4-board sandbox, throws the sand in there, and then stays there permanently to where you are sucked into this universe. And it's not like this is a wildly fantastical, colorful, or vibrant world. It's Gotham. I kept waiting for Batman to show up.
I was almost thinking more like Sin City, but
yeah, you go either way.
yeah.
But yeah, so the other thing I really liked about this movie, the other scene I really liked about this movie, is at the very end where you have Tom Hardy. So I didn't get into it with the plot synopsis, but essentially we have an issue where there's a couple on the run from the mob, and the male of the couple is the son of a mayoral candidate and a rich person who's played by Forrest Whitaker. And the mob wants them back. It doesn't really matter why. Who cares? A lot of this is just set up so that we can have fight scenes.
It's double crosses, cocaine deals, etc.
Yeah. So it all leads to a scene where they're in a stowaway house. Tom Hardy has the couple, and they've gotten away from the mob, and they're safe in the safe house. Is the word I was looking for. But then everybody converges on this house, and they have this really long, extended fight scene where they're trying to fight off a mob of guys in this house, and it is fucking sick, yo. It is fucking brutal. I mean, like, when the one girl gets in, you're like, oh, here we go with the strong female who's gonna somehow beat the fuck out of Tom Hardy, except that she made it believable. She does some Gracie fucking jujitsu shit on him, and it manages to kick a support, which causes a cave-in.
Well, you know who that is playing her, right?
Who is that?
That's Michelle Waterson, the karate hottie of UFC fame.
Oh, well, that makes a little bit more sense then. But yeah, it's that whole thing. People are getting stabbed and you feel it. People are getting, like, bones are breaking and you feel it. You feel every inch. And when Tom Hardy finally has the cave in, you're kind of like, oh, thank God, he's finally, like, free. Because she beat his ass. What good? And that had already been after he'd been taking an ass beating from everybody else. So I'm more willing to go with the idea of this, this little girl can beat up this big, strong man, because like a dozen other guys had already done that, and he had, like, waited. It was kind of going back to Gotham. It was she's in the role of Bane at the end of Nightfall.
I actually had flashbacks to the Dolph Lundgren Punisher that we talked about, where after mowing through floors and floors of Yakuza, he has to fight the deaf daughter, who's also a master assassin, and she's holding her own with this gigantic man for a little while. But it looks good what they're doing,
Right.
and yeah, he's just had to kill like 60 other Yakuza, criminals before her. So
Yeah, you can look. I'm not against like women kicking guys' asses, but you've got to give me a good setup, and this does that. But the style of that scene, the way that it is, the way that it's cut. Robert and I talk about this all the time. That when you cut so fast, you can't really follow the action. Gareth Edwards moves fast but smoothly. The cuts don't hide the ineptness of the shooting; it accentuates it.
that's the important part. That's the art that he has down to a science at this point, that he does probably better than anyone else right now, because the fight scenes he's filming are not easy. They are supposed to go fast paced, fought in almost real time type of situation with proficient combatants. So things are going to go fast and quick, but you have to be able to capture them and show the audience what's going on without, oh, I'm getting dizzy because they're jump cutting every second to something else where I can't figure
Going
this
back
out.
to the club scene. He goes to a wide shot of the girl doing something, and she does it with a dancer's grace. It's great. Like if you just like body movement, if you whether it's dancing, combat sport, or something else, this is the movie for you, because this frames body movement in a way that is really enjoyable. It is quite a sight to see. It's quite an artistic thing to watch when the body moves the way that it does in this movie. It's beautiful.
Oh, absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
So now that we've gushed over all of the violence in the movie, which is superb and the whole reason to watch this thing, I have to say it's the story in and of itself is not the dumbest thing I've ever seen. It's basically
It's pretty standard fare for this.
Yeah, they stole something they didn't know it belonged to the mob. And it's and the kid's the son of this rich person who's running for mayor, who has Tom Hardy on the take. So everybody's kind of tied up into each other. You have Timothy Oliphant's cop crew; they're all crooked, and it really comes down to everyone wants to get the girl. Only the girl is a boy, and Tom Hardy is there to save them. That's the whole fucking movie. This thing clocked in at 107 minutes. About right. I usually
didn't feel that long at all.
No, I honestly I think if you wanted to get it to a tight 90 minutes, there's some stuff with Forrest Whitaker that you could probably cut. Like because there's a couple of scenes of him and Tom Hardy kind of jaw-jacking at one another that you get the point faster than they got to the end of the scene.
Yeah, but I think that's also too that we're guys going into this who expect certain things and are used to this genre. There may be people who aren't, and again, while the Raid movies were great, I hadn't been exposed to them until Andrew told me about them. They're not widely seen as much as they probably should be. So there are probably people this is their first experience with Garrett's directorial style, his shooting style. So he may have thought, if I go too fast, nobody's going to get this. I have to slow the pace down at certain points so that when we bring it back up, it makes more sense. Yeah. I get that we absolutely could have cut stuff for sure. And if you're looking for that, those are probably the interactions that made the most sense to do without. But they do play in. And I think the movie is paced so fast that you really don't get the sense this is nearly 2 hours. It felt like an hour.
I will say this. Also, Gareth Evans has a gift for doing less with more. Sorry, doing more with less. I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. The hospital sequence where the assassin passes, I guess, like the wife character, or whatever girl is connected to the guy in the hospital.
Cruz's wife while they're in the hospital. Yeah.
And they pass each other and it's hello. Yes. Hello. We are strangers with social contracting. We are treating each other nicely. And then he does the deed. And he connects that, oh, she's with him and now she has to die and she's coming to the same thing. Like, oh no, he's killed this person and I'm next. And oh crap. Not a single bit of dialogue. Nothing.
Don't need it.
It was just in the acting was in the eyes. And let me tell you how I watch so much sludge when I see good acting and just the eyes and just that tacit acknowledgement, that electricity between two people of, oh no, my goose is cooked, and like, oh no, I have to kill this innocent woman. Oh my god, that was such a great scene. There was so little to it.
We live in different areas. I live in maybe a little bit more of an urban setting than you do, and I have a neurodivergent condition called hypervigilance, where my immediate thought when I go into somewhere is, what can somebody use to hurt me, and what can I use to defend myself? Um, so interactions like that, where you pass somebody in a hallway, whatever, there's always a thought in the back of my mind: are they here to do me harm? And to see that play out like that, I'm like, shit, I get that one. Yep, that's how that goes.
Just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they're not after you.
You're not paranoid if they are out to get you.
That's right. So the other thing I'm going to mention, and then I'm going to give you the final word, and then we'll move on. I like Tom Hardy, and I'm not saying I'm not a fan. And I've been told, and I think we're doing a triple feature later this year of like Tom Hardy movies, one of which is Bronson. Because Robert Winfrey kept beating me up about it. You know, like, you don't have the right to comment on Tom Hardy's acting. You've not seen enough of his films. And I'm like, fine. I will burden myself with his filmography. But
a succulent Tom Hardy film.
Yes. I'll pull it up in a second while you respond to this. But I've never been completely in love with Tom Hardy, because every time I see Tom Hardy, he's doing a silly voice. He's either Venom or, I don't know what the fuck he was doing in Inception, but it's like, I feel like Tom Hardy is kind of like butch, manly Johnny Depp. Like, you're always being silly. Can't you just be you? And here, he is very much acting, and he's doing a great job of it. He has that hard-boiled detective world weariness about him that I love, because I love those kinds of movies. And he's corrupt, but he's not evil. It's just kind of we all take payola. That's just the way Gotham runs. But he doesn't like it about himself. But what's a man to do? And then when he has to be the best version of himself, he does. That's how, our heroes don't always start out heroic. They can ascend to heroism. And that's what he does in this movie, and I like that.
Yeah, there's not really character arcs from this for anybody but him. But he does it well, where we are introduced to him in his ne'er-do-well phase. We learn as we go on, oh, not only that, but he's also on the take. And that's why he's involved in this. But he is essentially at heart a very flawed man in a very screwed up world, trying to do the right thing in the context of what it is, this world. And it doesn't always play out the way he would like it to. He has to do certain nefarious things in order to maintain a life at this point, and a career and a job for himself. And it's the rules of how things are. You can't always be Hamlet. You can't always be the one good person and essentially corrupt the world all around you and think things are going to be okay. That's not how that works, especially in the real world. So we get a lot of anti-Hamlets. He happens to be one. But the striving is always to, even if you're doing bad things, be principled about the bad things you're doing.
Absolutely. I'm going to throw it over to you. What haven't we talked about yet that you want to talk about?
So I want to underscore Ellie, because I think she was really good in this. Ellie is essentially his rookie partner in this movie, where she's not in on the corrupt stuff that he is involved with, be it his past with the narcotics squad run by Timothy Oliphant. I think a lot of her scenes are great, particularly the hospital follow-up scene where she goes after the assassin who killed Cruz and his wife. I thought that was awesome. We didn't really talk about the finale of this, where it's the showdown with Oliphant and Tom Hardy, where those guys essentially, that's the most dialogue maybe driven stuff you get in the film. And it still involves shooting, of course, but it's great. I love that. And I love, we don't get a definitive ending. We can make assumptions, where we talk about the good man and trying to come out in this individual doing these bad things, where at the end Hardy's telling Ellie, arrest me. I'm a part of this whole mess. Just arrest me. And she won't do it. And we see the police lights come, and Hardy's his fate is left very ambiguous to us, potentially for a sequel if this did well enough. Who knows? But hey, there's the ambulance right on cue. I know you love it, Mark.
I'm not saying it again. Just keep going.
Speaking of urban areas where we live,
Yeah.
yeah, but but I love those instances. Those are probably the parts that really stuck out with me, and I enjoyed. And the chase scene where you have this 18-wheeler truck and there's a SWAT car and all these things going on. That was just magically shot. I haven't seen a great chase scene like that in a long time, probably since the entirety of Mad Max Fury Road. But this was pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, if somebody said, I've seen too many of your podcasts, say something negative about this movie, or I can't sleep tonight. Forrest Whitaker's kind of hamming it up a little too much. That's the best I can come up with.
Has he played like a bad guy role like that anytime recently that you can think of?
Yeah, Godfather of Harlem, in which he's awesome.
Yeah, that's kind of a different world setting than this, though. You know what I mean?
He's also playing a real person, so they want something different from him. I almost can guarantee you, Garrett, this was one of those where we got Forrest Whitaker for this, and Gareth Evans was like, "You're my boss. You know, you're an entitled, you're Black Donald Trump or something along those lines."
I didn't bring you in to let you be understated,
right? And so I don't think he gave him notes or direction. He was like, "You're Black Donald Trump. Go." and your son's missing, and you'll burn the earth till you get him back. That's it. There's your motivation. And Forrest Whitaker just filled in the blanks. And I think because the movie has a veil of bleakness to it, that his slightly over-the-top performance is that much more jarring. It's a bit like you're driving with your best girl for a 2-hour dinner with her daughter, and the music goes from, you know, some folky Irish music to to Who Bangin' by the West Side Connection. True story, by the way. bit of musical whiplash in the car today.
How am I supposed to follow that?
You're not. All right. So, anything else about this movie, Pat? First of all, would you recommend this movie to, and who would you recommend it to?
Anybody who likes the action genre as a whole, anybody who enjoys very tightly shot, choreographed stuff in awesome windows. If you're a fan of Hong Kong style filmmaking for the actioners, this is for you. If you are a fan of dirty, urban, gritty drama, this is for you. I give the highest recommendation of those crowd bases to that movie.
I'm conflicted because my initial reaction this on my 3-point scale, where 1 is a nominee for the top 10 later in the year, 3 is a nomination for the bottom 5, and everything else is a 2. I was high 2 with this. Then I watched Nanas, which I'm going to review tomorrow with Mick and Mac.
And it's both of our favorite movies of the year so far.
And it's currently my number 1 favorite movie of the year. And I'm like, here's the thing, and I think this is why it's a high 2 for me. And the only other hesitation I have about that, and this is why I brought this up, did you see either Extraction movie?
I saw the first one with Hemsworth, yeah.
I can't remember if it was, I think it was Extraction 2. I said was in my top 10 for the year. And I'll go back and check the date on that. I'm 90% certain it was Extraction 2. I said it was in my top 10. And I really just thought it was perfect. And that's my struggle here. I do think this is a more or less perfectly made movie for what it's supposed to be. My problem is I think I enjoyed Extraction 2 more than I enjoyed this. And I can't quite put my finger on why I enjoyed Extraction 2. I think that also had stylized violence, but there was something else to it that reeled me in tighter than this one did.
It's a little simpler to follow, to my understanding. I know the first one of the Extraction movies is definitely more simple in terms of the plot than this is.
Oh, yeah,
this
the first Extraction's great.
Yeah. I can't speak to the second as much because I didn't see it, but
you're missing that. Dude, at one point, Chris Hemsworth's arm catches on fire and he starts punching people with it. Go watch it when we're done.
Yeah. With this, the thing is, there's a lot going on at one time. And because it's so quick, so actiony, and you maybe don't get the same following sense that you do in Extraction, where Extraction's narrative is a little cleaner, I guess we could call it.
Yeah.
But maybe it's something else, and maybe there's something that tonight's gimmick will help you address.
I think that's why we're doing this, Pat, is to help me help myself figure out, should this be in my top 10 or should I leave it a high 2? And with that said, tag in, partner.
All right. After much ado and much thought, there's certain essential elements that all action films have or need or do on a certain level it could do better. So what we're going to debut tonight is the Pat Mullin Manliness Action Scale. The MAS, as in mass. And the way it's going to work is this has 8 categories to it. We're going to score each category of this film on a 1 to 5 point scale. We will total it. Now, in 8 categories, 5 points per category, the highest score you can achieve for this would be a 40. I don't know if we're ever going to get to a 40, but we can try. But we're going to start it off with this, and I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions on this. We're going to start with category 1, which is the physique of the lead actor.
Okay.
Now, we know that Tom Hardy is in phenomenal shape generally all of the time. The man has trapezius muscles for days, practices martial arts on a daily basis, is a physical fitness nut.
Yeah,
and in most
Tom
of his
Hardy,
movies,
shaped like a shaven gorilla.
in the best way possible, like a
Yeah.
positive comparison. However, the only problem with this movie is you don't really get to see him show that at any point. He's basically in a snowy, wintry setting, and we don't get to see that physique like that. So unfortunately, as great as Tom is, you can't give him a 5 for it because it's not shown in this.
Yeah.
What we're going to do is benefit of the doubt him and give him a 4 based on his history, the shape he does look in this movie in clothes, but we can't go all the way because he doesn't show us the good. So he's going to get a 4 on this.
All right, so I'm actually going to keep track of this. So, in the first category of physical fitness, he's a 4 out of 5.
Yes.
Okay, I don't disagree.
Okay, cool.
He's. I will tell you this, just so I can weigh in here. He looks very beefy, but it's hard to tell if he's muscular beefy or if he's chunky beefy.
Right, like he's
'Cause he's
world
wearing
weary,
so
broken
much-
down cop beat.
Yeah, because he looks like, he looks like he walked off the set of a fucking 90s grunge band. Just he's got all the flannels on and the vest
He's got
and the this and
the
that.
layers. Yeah.
So it's like, well, what are you? Because like you could take that. I'll tell you what this movie needed. Since we're doing this is my contribution to these scales. What this movie needed to put him over the top was when he fights Timothy Oliphant. He just does one of these, and he's in there with the tank top.
I would have
Let's
even
go.
said when they get to the log cabin, his dad's log cabin, have a
Mhm.
scene where he peels the layers off and checks his wounds out and stuff and maybe addresses that and bandages them or something.
Ooh, kind of like a Rambo thing.
Yeah.
Okay, I can see that. Or
Yeah.
like a Arnold Schwarzenegger in the first Terminator. Where he's in the bathroom doing the eye kind of a thing.
100%.
think
Or
they-
like a scene where they take the shirt off and you see all the scars and everything on them, but it's like
Yeah.
also on an impressive physique,
I'm trying to think of what movie I saw where you actually they did a close up of the guy like stitching his wound, and I don't know if it was Schwarzenegger or Stallone. I'm sure I've seen this 1,000 times, but there's always, like, in these movies, this is the benefit of doing the segment. There's always the scene of the muscly manly man, the glistening muscly manly man with a gaping wound, and he's got to sew himself back
The
together.
patch up. Yeah.
Yeah, this movie needed
Yeah.
a patch up scene.
Agree 100%, especially considering he'd been shot, stabbed, etc. Yeah.
Harpooned, hit with a
Yeah.
steel chair, brass knuckles.
And unfortunately, that's why we can't give the usually completely reliable Tom Hardy in the physique category a 5. We have
Yeah.
to give it a 4.
Okay, moving on.
Number 2, love interest / love scene. Well, this gets a 0, obviously, unfortunately, because there is no hot love interest who he does a gratuitous scene with where she's topless and he's shadowed around her where you maybe see his butt, but you don't. And there's some kind of 80s rock ballad playing in the background. And, it takes about 90 seconds of the movie, but it shows that not only is he a manly man, but he's a ladies' man too. So
You're right. It's a 0 out of 5, but I have to be the modern film person, and for the audience's sake, and I'm going to take ChatGPT's note on me and not over-explain this. Very simple. The kids don't want it, Pat. They don't hate to lose, and they don't love sex. Not in their media.
Well, if we're ever going to change this world for the better, we got to get it back.
I 100% agree. It's funny. I watched another advertisement for tomorrow night's review. I watched Summer of '69, which is a raunchy teen sex comedy without any teen sex. This is the world we live in.
I mean, I go back to a movie like Rapid Fire with Brandon Lee.
Right.
And awesome, great pace, everything. He gets a love interest, and guess what? There's a pretty good montage with a love scene in it, and they're playing "Can't Find My Way" by Hardline, a late
Right.
'80s, early '90s hair band. And shit, yeah, that gets you hyped up too, because like, yeah, even though
when we meet Tom Hardy, what this movie needed, when we first meet Tom Hardy, after we've introduced the gang and the kids and everything, our opening
Prostitute.
scene of our hero, he's in bed with a hooker who's ass up, face down, and he just gets up, takes some crumbled muddy, throws it on the thing, puts himself back to then we can get our gratuitous body shot of Tom Hardy.
Yeah, let him do that. Take a Percocet and drink water, like
right.
Yeah,
and again, she's face down, ass up. You don't even see her face, just her ass, and she kind of mumbles into the pillow, "Hey, where you going?" And he's like, "Gotta go to work, babe." And he trunges down the mopes.
Yeah.
down
you're
the
there.
shambles.
Down
the
you're
stairs.
There.
Yeah.
So
and that's it. Hey, baby, when am I going to see you again? Something like that.
Yeah, 100%. So unfortunately, this does not contain that. So you
Right.
have to give it a 0.
And then the love interest, the opposite leading lady is the street cop that he's partnered with, and they do the "I don't work with a partner" thing, which is fine. It gives them somewhat of dimension. And this is another one of those where he isn't the star of his own movie, because this is kind of her story. This is like you said before, like he's the only one that gets a redemption arc. No. Her arc is she gets to ascend into hero. She saves the day in the end, Pat. She saves
really
the day.
does. I said I like the character. Unfortunately, there's no physical chemistry or anything between them. And yeah,
right.
Yeah,
he doesn't. There isn't a scene later on where like you're a pig, you're a bitch. Oh, and she like pulls her tits out.
Yeah.
Like what happened in a normal situation.
That's how I saw it. But
right.
Unfortunately, that is going to go to a 0, and there's nothing we can really do about that.
Moving on.
Category 3, the ne'er-do-well. So most of our heroes in these movies have at least 1 to 2 bad traits, if not a ton. Tom's going to score a 5 on the ne'er-do-well scale in this because 1, he's a dirty cop. 2, he's a deadbeat husband who's been divorced and behind on alimony payments. And 3, he's a deadbeat dad who's trying to buy dollar store goods for his child's Christmas.
That's the thing. I needed to see that. We get told that in exposition. Where's the scene of the nagging whore wife?
Well, they have the phone. They have the phone conversations, and they show.
It clearly wasn't memorable. If I don't remember it's in the movie.
I remember it was there, and that's enough for me.
You remember what you ate for breakfast in 1982?
I wasn't alive in 1982.
Yet you remember.
I'm just saying they did include it. It's not. It's just to more paint the picture of this is not a good guy, which I'm fine with. And again, we're talking a ne'er-do-well scale. He's clearly a 5 on the ne'er-do-well scale.
I agree with you. I don't disagree with you. I haven't disagreed with any of your scores. But again, I'm looking at this as a producer, as a filmmaker, and I'm like, why not? Why not show up with the bag of stuff for the kids? And the wife's like, you're behind on, and let her be a 10 on the Adrian scale. You can't see your child. You're a bad father, and you can't bring me dollar store trinkets, and you see the kid in the window like a puppy.
She wouldn't be on the Adrian scale because she'd be right, but
fair.
Yeah. All right. So on the ne'er-do-well scale, he gets a 5.
Okay.
Through 3 categories, we've got a score of 9 out of a possible 15. Not bad.
Yep. Yeah. The lack of Eros really killed the score of this movie.
Yeah. Our next category, criminal element. This is going to get a 5 for me.
Yeah.
Because we are basically touching every base possible. We have the organized crime element of 2 different sets of triads in a war with each other.
They made up for lack of sex with an extra dose of violence.
We have the thieves in question, who happen to, of course, be the offspring of a dirty politician
Mm-hmm.
who now is involved with the organized crime element, who, by the way, they have dirty cops on the payroll. So everything you could want illegal happening at one time is right here. So I love that. That gets a 5 for me.
All that was missing was a mass vigilante.
Essentially, we had one without the mask, but it's fine, you know.
Well, he's kind of almost more of like a Commissioner Gordon in this thing. What this thing really lacked was that righteous hand of justice.
Yeah, but we're in a dark world where that hand does not exist.
That's right, making it much more bleaker.
Yes. So that's also going to get a 5 for me on this scale. So out of a possible 1, 2, 3, 4, 20 points, we have 14, if I'm counting correctly, Mark.
You are.
That's pretty good. Our next category is hand-to-hand combat.
Oh, 5.
Now, see, unfortunately, I'm going to give a 2 here.
Oh, interesting. That you juked when you should have jived. What's going on here?
As much as I love the pitched gun battles and chase scenes and everything, I did not get enough mano-a-mano, hand-to-hand, no-gun fighting in this. We got that great scene of him and the assassin, Michelle Waterson, like we talked about, where she's just done kicking his ass for a good, minute and a half. And that was great. I do like what they did with the gun battles, but there's not enough of picking off one at a time and a serious throwdown for me in this. And so I have to only give it a 2 out of 5 here on this.
Here's what I'll tell you. I am willing to go along with that for the following reason. We don't have that last scene of the original Lethal Weapon where Mel Gibson hand-to-hand fights dude on the lawn.
Yeah, he done jujitsu's him on the lawn.
Right. We don't even have a Friday. I knocked you. You just got knocked the fuck out. Again, even Friday has a final fight scene.
Yeah. And that was lacking.
Yeah. Timothy Olyphant and Tom Hardy really need it. Like I said, you have Tom Hardy, after he's, Dark Knighted his way through all of these people, including Michelle Waterson, and there's Timothy Olyphant, trying to jump a train like a hobo. And Tom Hardy is like, come on, motherfucker, and Timothy Olyphant's like, all right, and that's where he takes his shirt off and he's got the tank top and Timothy Olyphant gets down and we have
and we know
ourselves
that Tom Hardy can do jujitsu a motherfucker.
Right, and we have ourselves a good old fashioned train track fist fight.
Let them, knock the guns out of each other's hands and they go onto the train track so they can't get them. And now you got to throw down mano a mano.
Right. I mean, even shaping around the fact that there's one gun between them and they keep fighting for the gun.
Yeah.
And they're kicking it and all this other stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't get that.
So that's funny. You mentioned that. Going back to the whole crisp arm, collar and elbow tie-up metaphor, this kinds of lacks that hateful passion that I think it needed in retrospect.
Yeah. So that's why I know it's probably not popular, but I have to give the hand-to-hand combat element a 2 out of 5 here. And I think I'm probably being maybe a little generous because I was so impressed with what they did with the pitched gun fights. But we need a manly action male lead at a certain point to throw down with just his bare hands and do it. And we never got that.
Yeah.
And I think it's a shame too, because this is probably one of the more capably believable guys in that vein. So
but I think we touched on something that, because we spent the first half of the podcast gushing about this movie, but as we're going through your scales, and I think this is the value of doing these, is it's making me look at certain elements of it that I kind of just said I kind of bypassed. And that I hate you passion that's present in, again, Lethal Weapon and some of these, even fucking First Blood Part 2.
Yeah. I was going to go to Commando when he fights the other guy.
Yeah, Commando's another good one. But when I brought up First Blood Part 2, I was thinking like there's a whole scene of them like torturing him. So when he nips up, right? When Hogan comes back and he starts killing Russians and then takes out all of the Vietnamese men ever, as they're trying to escape from Vietnam, you're cheering him on because he's been so brutalized, and that's missing from here. We needed Timothy Olyphant to brutalize Tom Hardy, so that in the end, when Tom Hardy's like, I need to get my comeuppance, I need to get my last licks, you're like, yes, this is the fight we've been waiting for.
Yeah. So unfortunately, we don't get that. So that would put a 2-pointer on this one. That's going to take us to 16 points out of a possible 25 as we stand right now.
Mm-hmm.
Our next category, and it's a big one, literally and figuratively, body count.
Body counts in the house. Body count.
Now, Now, there's two ways that I basically look at body count. One is by the literal name of it, body count, how many people died here, how many people were killed. But also, I look to meaningful and impactful deaths as a little bit of a cheat in that as well. We done got all that in this, so body count's getting a 5.
Mm-hmm. It's not quite Kill Bill, but it's up there.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question that the body count in this was impressive and done well. And we did get meaningful deaths in this along the way. So I don't think I have any choice but to score this a 5. So as that point would stand, we are now at 21 out of a possible 30 points.
Yep. 5, 10, 15, 19, 20, 21. Yep.
Our next category, and unfortunately, this is going to be more in the love interest scene scoring than it is the body count. One-liners.
This is not a fun movie.
This is a 0 on the one-liner scale.
This is a bleak fucking movie, man.
Yeah, there's certain movies that just don't have the time, the patience, or the environment for a good one-liner.
Mm-hmm.
Like, after, let's say he shoots Timothy Oliphant and Oliphant falls into a train car, and his partner Ellie may ask, what happened to him? He had to catch a train. We don't get that.
But it doesn't even have the Predator full of toxic masculinity lines. I ain't got time to bleed. And he was like, I'm surrounded by a bunch of slack-jawed faggots. A personal favorite. Dylan, you son of a bitch.
Looks sick. Lost weight. Yeah.
I needed some toxic masculinity in this movie, and it's
yeah.
That.
So I don't think there's any question on that scale. Unfortunately, we have to give this a 0.
Yeah.
Which that unfortunately will bring us to a 21 out of possible 35.
Mm-hmm.
Our last piece of the scale is essentially a potpourri, if you will, that I'm just going to call the bonus round. Okay. Where are there elements to this that don't fit into any of those neat little boxes, but they deserve points for having them in there? And I think there are plenty. One of them being, as I mentioned before, Michelle Waterston being cast as the accountant, or not the accountant, sorry, movie on the brain, as the assassin, working for the Triad family. I love that they cast somebody with a real fighting background, and not only just a real fighting background, but an aesthetically pleasing fighting background that she can execute perfectly, because not only is she a martial artist, but she's also a longtime dancer. So she's able to do these movements with a believability. But like when you were talking about the body movement art of seeing that club scene go through, there's a believability, there's a realism, and I think that translates well to a lot of those scenes. I think the casting of Timothy Oliphant as Tom, he's not the perennial nemesis, but I love the fact that they got Timothy in here because he's a guy who fits into this movie like a hand into a glove. In almost a Vic Mackey type role as a guy manipulating the narc squad into doing terrible things for terrible people.
It's so hilarious you said Vic Mackey because I was actually thinking of Shane from The Shield, whose name is
Walton Goggins.
Walton Goggins, he's not as physical as you need him to be in this movie, but actually you could have gotten away with it because this movie lacks that kind of physicality.
Yeah,
so you could have used Walton Goggins, and he'd have been perfect for this.
Yeah, I think incorporating scenes of the gun battles were done really well. Again, a personal standout favorite for me is Ellie and that other assassin in the hospital when they get to that part. I love that when she apprehends him. I love the idea of the Triad family feud that they put into it.
Yeah.
Where this whole thing is based around the succession. And not only that, but they were able to incorporate a powerful politician by using his kid as the thief and courier for this deal. So on the bonus point scale for those elements they incorporated, I got to give it a 5. I really enjoyed the things they put in to kind of get the audience more into it and add little winks and nods to people who know who people are in this. So I'm giving it a 5 on the bonus points, which brings it up to where are we at now, Mark? 26 points.
I believe so. 5, 10, 15, 26. Yes.
So we have a 26 out of 40 score for Havoc, which I think is a pretty darn good score, all things considered.
Let me throw a scale at you. If John Wick is the high watermark, John Wick is a 10. In the gun fu lone man fights an army of villains and pitch gun battles and hand-to-hand combat. And I don't even know what a 1 would be. But if John Wick is a 10, where does this rank for you?
If John Wick's a 10, I'll give this an 8.
Okay.
I think the big thing setting John Wick apart is you get a lot more of the hand-to-hand, one-on-one, hateful stuff we talked about.
You
Particularly
also get to know John as a person. And when he gets the Job treatment, you understand why he becomes the devil.
Yeah, and I was going to say, it's really more standouts for me in the first and fourth installments of that series than anything else.
I love the fourth one. It was one in my top 10 movies of that year. But I mean, I leaned over to my date, whom I took to that movie, and I said, "We're kind of watching a video game we can't play, right?" And she said, "That's how I feel."
Yeah, but I enjoy certain elements of that more than the second and third installments. I would say, if you're including this and ranking this among the 4 John Wick movies, I'd put it behind 1 and 4 and ahead of 2 and 3.
That's fair. Okay. Anything else before we close out for the night?
It's a fun entry to introduce the mass scale.
Yeah, I told my son to watch it. There's nothing in this movie that he hasn't seen before. There's because of the distinct lack of tits, which I don't really want him to watch, or at least he would watch not with me around.
How old is he now?
He's 11. He'll be going into the 6th grade.
It's about that time.
Okay, again, I don't want to watch with my son. I'm not at that point yet. However, what he watches on his own is his own issue. However, I told him my point, besides my parenting, is he asked me, he actually texted me this weekend. He's with his mother this weekend, and he was like, "Can you give me some movies to watch that are streaming right now?" And I said, "Yeah, Nanas and Havoc." And I told him, like, watch Havoc. This is an unadulterated, fantastic action movie. It is the most modern example of movies for guys who like movies.
And that's primarily why we chose this for this exercise, I guess you'd call it.
And I have to say, Pat, sometimes you pitch me things. First of all, everyone who pitches me stuff slightly annoys me because I'm a slave to my own control issues and my formats. However, I'm not a dictator, just a dick. So when you're like, I have this idea, will you please be a little loosey-goosey and let's try it out? And I have to say, I want to do this again. Next time a movie falls into the criteria of manly movies for guys who like movies, we'll do this again with this format, because I really enjoyed the scale element to it, because it made me go back and re-review the movie with some more critical analysis.
Yeah, this was, again, my beta test for it. Didn't know if it would land or not. Wanted to see how it would work out. Apparently, Mark's a fan, which is the biggest thing for me. So that means I'll get to do it again at some point.
Here's your approval and validation. You did very well, Pat. You can continue to pitch me ideas. I don't walk away from this podcast not wanting to talk to you again. So you're doing better than some of your peers.
I like to keep things simple. What can I say?
Very good and respectful, Pat. You got to be respectful. All right.
I've always felt that way.
Yes, sir. All right. Well, that is our review of Havoc. It's currently on Netflix. Give it a spin. Throw it in the bed with Madonna. See if she sleeps with it. Tomorrow, speaking of sleeping with Madonna, Mick and Mac will be on the triple feature. Where's Damn You Hollywood? We're taking the week off. Okay? We're taking the week off. We'll be back a week from tomorrow with Final Destination Bloodlines. But tomorrow, I'm going to spend some time with some other friends. We're going to talk Nanas, which is a Vince Vaughn movie. It's about the guy who opened a restaurant with all the cooks or grandmas. It's
on Staten Island. It's still open and operating.
Yep, that's right. Make a call ahead for a reservation. Fabulous movie. Absolutely wonderful. I will gush about it tomorrow. Summer of '69, which I mentioned before, which is on Hulu, and a movie that's currently streaming that was in theatrical exhibition this past January. One of Them Days, which Did you like Fraudy but wished it was 2 females instead of 2 black guys? Well, one of them days is for you. I watched it with my kids. A grand old time was had. Also, no nudity in that movie. In any case, no other podcast Tuesday or Wednesday. Thursday. Myself and Jesse, and no Dorian. Dorian is on hiatus for the near future. But we will be doing The West Wing season 5. And then on Friday, which was rescheduled from the previous Sunday, Jesse and I are back in sessions. And this one is going to be a rap song about our plugs, and specifically a little line that a little girl likes to utter at the end of a podcast she's on called, "These are the plugs that pay me." So we're going to talk Alexis stories. Pat loves Alexis, just absolutely adores her. Throws rose petals everywhere she walks. So we're going to tell fun Alexis stories this Friday about how
she came. Going to be what, like 5 minutes?
So this is going to be how she came to the podcast and wouldn't leave, and then demanded to be paid for a podcast that makes no money. It'll be fun. A grand time will be had by all. And I'm going to make a rap song about it, set to OPP's. Sorry, yeah. Right. Naughty by Nature.
Wait, are we paying people on these things?
One sec. Naughty by Nature.
Down with OPP.
Here comes the money. But instead of here comes the money, it'll be the plugs that pay me. It's going to be fantastic.
We get paid for these things?
No, that's the point, Pat. That's the point. We're here. We're not here to get paid. We're here to have fun, be friends, and talk film.
Yeah, I'm trying to save the generation by introducing stuff like this.
That's right. It's a noble effort, Pat. It's a noble effort. I'm glad you get that. Some people, they're just here for the paycheck, but Pat's here for the nobility.
It's like people only do things because they get paid. And that's just really sad.
Like it's a job.
By the way, did I tell you how refreshing Canada Dry zero sugar ginger ale is? You'd never know it, but there's zero sugar added to this lovely product made by Canada Dry. I don't know what your bottle contains only 15 calories.
I don't know what you're talking about, but I will tell you that my stomach was feeling a little queasy before the show tonight. And what better way to quench a queasy stomach than with Sprite Zero, brought to you by the good people at Coca-Cola.
And I can drink this late because it's also caffeine-free.
Exactly. All right, the sarcasm's a bit deep in here, even for me. So, moving on. This Saturday is not a podcast. All right, so that's that. If you're wondering what we did the previous week, we reviewed Thunderbolt. Speaking of contentious podcasts, less contentious was the Indie-Siders. We talked Paul Heyman's fucking Crash Out promo. Becky Lynch's I Took Out the Garbage. And then Harry reviewed Action 7. I had a power hit and had to spend 20 minutes trying to get back on my own podcast. And speaking of Toxic Jesus, myself and Jason Teasley reviewed You Season 5. Finally finished with that, thank God. But some fun was had at the very end with me comparing Joe to Jesus. So that, marching with the cross. So that was fun. Aren't you sad you missed that? You being of the church?
Being of the church and being someone who watched You, no. I think the less said about You Season 5, the better.
Agreed, pal. Agreed. All right. Pat will be back. When are you back, Pat? If you're trying to find more of Pat, he and I just did not that long ago a triple feature of the fun High School in Trouble movies. But you'll be back July 11th. I'm going to pick up where you and Ronnie left off. I'm going to make myself watch Tulsa King Season 1, and then you and I are going to review Tulsa King Season 2.
Yeah. Oh, all right. Yeah, I'm excited for that. And Season 3 is shooting right now.
And then in August, on a Friday, myself and Pat will be reviewing Swimming with Sharks, Suicide Kings, and American Psycho.
That triple feature, that's right.
And then in September, Pat will be back for Queen of the Ring, F1, and Magazine Dreams.
Oh, God, we're actually doing all those?
Sure are, pal.
Magazine Dreams is so fucking bad.
Oh, is it? I haven't seen it, and I want to.
It's so fucking terrible.
Oh, good. Save it for September, baby. Yeah. And then in October, we're going to be looking at some, I think, Darren Aronofsky films: Requiem for a Dream, The Wrestler, and The Whale. So I got you once a month for the next couple of months. How do you feel about that?
I feel pretty good about it. Maybe we'll find something along the way that tickles our fancy in this vein again, and we can figure something out for that. But I think without over, how can people miss me if I don't go away? You know.
That's right, Jim. That's right. All right, folks. Thank you for joining us here on the Whiskey Rebellion. Pat, always a pleasure. Consummate professional. Just one of the best here. People could learn from you, Pat. They could learn from you. With that said, if I have any friends left, be well, be safe, and behave.